Hey everybody, welcome back to Video Game Esoteric, and if you know me and you know the channel, you know full well I was always planning to do a Haunted Castle Revisited video. The game came out yesterday, I played it, I captured it, I fell in love with it, and I figured it was time to talk about the new Castlevania game on the block, because honestly, we have not had a new Castlevania game in forever, and if you know me and the channel, you know it's one of my favorite franchises of all time. And to say that the original Haunted Castle on arcade boards is a bad game would be an understatement. It is Hall of Fame level, first ballot voting jank. It is not good, it is not charming, it is fun as a curiosity, but otherwise it was an absolute failure for Konami, and I have talked about it on the channel before. So yesterday when the Nintendo Direct went out and I found out that they had remade Haunted Castle for a new audience, I downloaded it immediately and figured it would take me a couple days to actually see the end of the game. Surprisingly enough, that wasn't the case, so we're here with a video tonight. Or get too far involved though, do me a huge favor, go down below, hit like and subscribe, and ring that notification bell, definitely helps us out. And if you feel so inclined to want to support the channel, I got a Patreon link down below as well. And while this is going to be a long video comparing the new version to the original, talking about all of the changes and modifications, if you want the TLDR, this game is awesome, go buy the collection, even if you just want it for Haunted Castle Revisited. This is classic 2D Castlevania, heart in spots, great sprite work, everything you want out of Castlevania and nothing else. And trust me, we're going to get in depth in this video comparing all of the differences. As you'll see here, the original arcade game has basically this Red Devil level from Mega Man, except as a wall, completely missing out of the new version, and probably for the best. And honestly, I did not see this coming, nor did anyone else. When the announcement came out yesterday, I saw that there was a DS collection, but honestly, it took me like 5 or 6 minutes to see the headline that Haunted Castle had been remade. That was definitely surprising. Honestly, it's just one of those titles I figured Konami wanted to forget about, because it was not remembered fondly whatsoever. What M2 has done here, revisiting this game, modernizing it for a modern audience, and basically restructuring it to be an enjoyable experience, is second to none. This is just a great entry in the Castlevania franchise, and it's so good to have a new game, especially in 2D, because it really has been forever. And if you grew up with this franchise like I did, you're always waiting for Konami to do something with it. But obviously, for the most part, Konami's more interested in making patch slot machines for Japanese pachinko parlors than they are video games at this point in time. In this first boss battle here with Medusa, all of the bosses are going to be the same. There's going to be some changes in the level structure. There's going to be some new areas, so some areas removed from the original. But if you enjoyed the bosses from the first game, everything is going to be here exactly as you remember it, which I think is a nice choice on behalf of M2, leaving enough of the game to be familiar if you did play the original, but basically changing it up, because you'll see here, in the original game, you used a bomb, not that torch, but otherwise, Medusa was the exact same, throwing those little snakes out that would scurry along the floor, but of course it was much harder. And as we move into the second stage, I will say, this game is absolutely gorgeous to look at. Finally, Simon Belmont no longer walks around like he just ate truck stop sushi and has to absolutely crap his pants. But there's one thing for certain, Simon Belmont's absolutely not been skipping any days at the gym. He is roided up to hell in this game, but I absolutely do love the sprite work. And as we go through this cavern with the mermen and the bats flying around, again, absolutely gorgeous visuals. This is classic 2D Castlevania, how I know, love, and remember it, and that is so nice to see. Now, as far as how this game was made, I'm assuming these are hand-drawn sprites and not 3D converted down to 2D, but the game is so new, really there's not much information on how it was in fact made, but however they did this artwork, it just works. And I will say, they've definitely eased up on some of the jumps and fallback damage as well, because as we go through the same area in the original Haunted Castle, this is a place where you could just absolutely miss jumps even though you felt like you hit them. Like right here, I just hit that staircase and fall straight to my death, which feels like a very cheap death. Here, all of that's been 100% fixed up, so all of those annoying deaths where the game basically fought you the entire time are 100% gone, and that is such a vast improvement. This is difficult when it needs to be, but it is not punishingly so to the point where you feel like it's just trying to screw you over. And just like any good Castlevania game, sometimes you do need to be patient and wait for danger to get out of the way. The entire soundtrack has been remade as well. It's classic Castlevania tracks with a new sound, and we're going to be doing a lot of sound comparisons in this video. But here's your first sample, listen, and I'll be right back. Absolutely awesome rendition of the original music from the game, and it's going to be an original composition soundtrack the entire way through, remaking all of the tracks from the original Haunted Castle. As you go through this area here, I love how expanded the artwork is. If we move back to Haunted Castle, the original arcade game, you're going to see it has this blood red sky, but it is way more basic. Obviously, the hardware back in the 80s, a lot more rudimentary than we have today. But I just love how everything has been reimagined, from the boss battles to the artwork to the difficulty to the platforming. Everything here is top-notch Castlevania. If you die, it's because you made a mistake or didn't play right. If you live, it's because you succeeded in doing what the game asked of you. Gone are the annoying deaths where you feel like you just basically got screwed over because the game wanted more quarters. Like in that boss battle there, you could definitely die a lot of times because the boss had some very weird movement patterns. Here, if you identify the pattern and understand where your safe spots and dangerous spots are, you will be able to beat this boss. Now, the one thing I can tell you off the top, though, is this game by default at normal difficulty is just way too easy. You'll see here I'm already through stage 2 with the stage clear icon. I 1cc'd this game on normal difficulty my first playthrough. I thought it was going to take 8 to 10 hours to be able to actually capture enough footage to be able to show you this entire game. But honestly, on my first playthrough in normal difficulty, I 1cc'd it, no issues whatsoever. So if you're a Castlevania veteran, definitely go and just put it on hard mode, start from there, and pretend everything else doesn't exist. But speaking about what does exist, a new rendition of Bloody Tears, so I'm going to let you listen to that, and I will let you listen to the original as well so you can hear the contrast, because it's good. Absolutely spectacular 10 out of 10 version of Bloody Tears there, but let's go ahead and listen to the same track in the original so you can hear the difference. Enjoy again. Honestly, both tracks are absolutely amazing. If there's one thing that you couldn't say negatively about the arcade original Haunted Castle, was that it had bad music. It had some of the best tracks of all time, in my opinion. And it would have been fun to have the option to hear the arcade original music within this remake, but I get the artist and developer's intent was for you to play and hear the game, how they designed it, so it makes total sense that it's not an option, but you never know, in an update maybe it will be. And of course, if we're going to listen to Bloody Tears, you get to see a Bloody Tear as well, because this game is just absolutely filled with details, from the parallax scrolling in the backgrounds to all of the new sprite work to the flickering pseudo lighting on the wall from those torches. Everything here just looks absolutely gorgeous, and the original game was definitely not something that you would want to look at very long. It was definitely an ugly graphical experience, but that's down to the fact that the original arcade version, like you see here, was rushed and definitely moved a lot quicker. But in this one instance, when you go through this door, at least in my playthrough of the revisited version, this area does not exist, where you have to fight the harpies in what kind of looks like ancient Greece or ancient Rome. So there's definitely been a few cuts to the game. They are meaningless in the grand scheme of things, but I do want you to know that they are there, unless there's some secret that you need to unlock to be able to actually go through that, because again, when you watch this video, this game is all of about 24 hours old at this point in time, so there might be some discoveries to be made further on. And every single boss again is the same except enhanced. The stained glass knight here looks absolutely spectacular in his new rendition compared to the arcade original, which actually seemed to be relatively ugly in my opinion. And in some strange instances on the arcade board, some of the bosses didn't really seem to have any hit points whatsoever, and you could instantaneously defeat them without ever really even trying. And that's the big addition to this game. It's actually balanced, it actually has challenge, but not so much weirdness that you feel like the game is unfinished, because that's absolutely how the arcade version felt. You'll see here the same boss fight. If you just use the crosses, bring the right sub weapon in, and spam a few attacks, the stained glass knight is dead absolutely immediately. That seems like a programming error where here you're gonna have to get your whip strikes in to get it done. And you will notice throughout the game I do upgrade the whip. There's different orbs that will allow you to get a more powerful whip, but the minute you take a hit you're going to lose those. There is a big risk versus reward in the game as to how powered up you want that whip to be versus when you want to take some damage just to get through a tough area and move on, because just kind of tanking some hits and getting bounced past difficult areas is definitely a strategy in Haunted Castle Revisited, the same way it is in every other Castlevania game. But this level right here is another one that just has seen so many visual enhancements compared to the arcade original. This really does look like the place where they would put coffins around Dracula's castle, where here it's a monotone mud brown that really doesn't impart any sort of excitement whatsoever, and that's something that was really lacking from the arcade original. Compared to the console releases we got, it just wasn't a very pretty game. And hey, at least the Fleamen in the new version also don't jump around as crazy as they used to, but honestly maybe the Fleamen could be a little bit more wild. But I love this area here. Again, like I said, you can try to tank some damage just to avoid some enemies and move on. That's always a strategy in a Castlevania game, and it's no different here in Haunted Castle Revisited. And as we drop down, we're going to get close to the next boss fight, and we'll talk about more on the bosses and how they've been expanded as well. But honestly, the real takeaway here is that Konami finally gave fans a quote-unquote new Castlevania game, especially the fans of the 2D entries. We've been basically begging to get a new experience in this franchise for the longest time, and it's finally happened, and that's the most exciting part. The fact that the game is as good as it is just icing on the cake. And as we move into this stone golem fight here, or whatever his name is, I did not remember as I was recording this voiceover, a lot of the bosses have new move sets and an expanded feature set compared to the arcade original. You'll see here this gigantic spike coming out of the ground that you can jump over, or in the arcade version, still a fun boss fight, one of the better ones in the game, but pretty much every single boss here has something new to see and do. So even if you're a huge fan somehow of the arcade original and you speedrun it a ton, Haunted Castle Revisited is still going to give you enough new meat on the bone that it's going to be a really satisfying meal for you to enjoy. And I do hope that this is the start of maybe more of this for Castlevania and Konami. There's so much life that could still be lived in the Castlevania franchise, especially in the 2D front. I just really feel like they're obviously remaking Silent Hill 2, they're bringing out new Silent Hill games. Hopefully that means we're going to see a new Castlevania sometime soon, and one made in the classical style, not the Mercury Steam 3D action slash beat 'em ups that we have played. They're not bad games, they're just not my favorite. And you'll see here, sometimes they've definitely made the game easier for a good reason. As you go up this elevator, all of those platforms are going to cause damage, but you're going to see we go up at a relatively normal pace, so it doesn't end up being too punishingly difficult to actually avoid them. Where on the arcade PCB, it absolutely flies, and if you do not have every single placement memorized, you are guaranteed to take damage on the way up. It's just how that game worked. It basically forced you into a state where you would have to actually take that damage because you had no other choice. And that's about the worst design in a video game you can have, especially an arcade game where you have to take damage and feed it more quarters if you ever want to see the ending. But a good choice is to listen to the next sound sampler we're going to have Revisited first and the original game second. You can compare and leave me a comment and tell me which one you like better. Obviously the sound quality on the Switch version is going to be far superior because it has a lot better sound hardware than an arcade board from the 80s, but honestly both versions do it for me, and I do hope maybe sometime in the future we will get an update to give us the option to have either musical track in. But if we never do, the new tracks are every bit as good as the originals. The composer did an absolutely outstanding job modernizing them while still giving them the same feel and vibe. As we get into the Frankenstein fight here, you're going to see, again, same fight with this deck couple additions. That's the fun thing. Even if you played Haunted Castle before multiple times like I have, there's still something in this game that's going to surprise you even on your first playthrough. You'll see here Frankenstein, basically the same boss battle, but all he really ever does is hit the wall and you need to avoid the bricks. Again, basically almost a free win in spots, where here there's a lot more going on, a lot more graphically going on, and just a lot more flair. This takes the Haunted Castle formula and just runs with it, and it gives us the game that we should have gotten in the first place back in the 80s. But again, that's what happens when you rush games out. They are never going to be good, because Castlevania in the arcade should have been an awesome experience. Castlevania the Arcade, the game that I was able to release for everyone to enjoy. Awesome time, and if you never played that, check my channel out. I'll try to leave a link in the description below if I remember. And there are, like I said, small quality of life improvements. If you fall here, you don't instantaneously die because it is quite easy. Where in the arcade original, if you fell there, you just absolutely had to start over. And some versions of the board didn't even allow for continues. You know, as we move into the Dracula fight, this has definitely been improved as well, but it is still a very easy fight. So one more time to remind you, if you are a Castlevania veteran, just immediately put the game to hard mode and start playing from there. Normal is just too easy, even for somebody who's probably haven't played a game in like 10 years or so in this franchise. But I do love the Castlevania sprite work here. The face still looks a little bit like Burt Reynolds to me. Unfortunately, when the face gets bigger, it no longer looks like Ted Danson, and that maybe is a little bit of a miss. That obviously is a joke, but in the original, I always thought the head looked like Ted Danson, and I will show that to you in just a moment. Now you have these 4 massive Dracula skulls that you can knock down, but you have to hit the spinning orb around, where in the original you had one head, and if that is not Ted Danson, I don't know who it is. Leave me a comment down below and tell me what you think. And the Dracula fight in the original was basically, again, another free boss battle. If you lost there, it's because you weren't doing anything. We're here in Revisited. Even though it's not the hardest Castlevania boss battle I've ever had with Dracula, it is still effective, and it is so much fun to see. So basically, Konami finally succeeded. They broke Dracula's curse. Haunted Castle no longer sucks. Play Haunted Castle Revisited. It's one of the best new Castlevania games in a long time, and honestly, it's one of the only ones, but I'd say this is now in my top 15 of all time. Short of that, we're done. Dracula's dead, her bride's been saved, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.